I find it hard to believe, but 70 years is a long, long time. And the event itself, the College World Series in 1952, it has remained in these 70 years one of my great memories. And I can honestly say hardly a week goes by that I don't think back to something that happened or just the event itself. That College World Series was so meaningful to me in my life that I put it right up there at the top. Freshmen were ineligible for varsity competition. That was a rule. So I really was closely associated with the basketball players. We were all on scholarship. And the baseball team, I pitched as a freshman, and that was my only contact with the freshman athletes. But I would say once I got playing with the varsity, my sophomore year when I came back, then that became a close association for me. And to this day, I think of each and every one of them. Hop Riopel was my freshman coach, and he coached the freshman football, basketball, and baseball. And he took a liking to me, I could tell. And he kept in touch with me off season. And when my sophomore year in basketball, we went to the NIT. When the NIT back in the 50s was big, teams that qualified for the NCAA chose to go to the NIT instead. So just to show you the 12 teams that were selected for the NIT, all in Madison Square Garden, all in New York City, and all in a week. Not an awful lot of publicity and interest in the NIT. And in my sophomore year, we got eliminated in the semifinals. And so I came back with the basketball team. And as I arrived on campus, I went up to my room, and who was in there but Hop? And I said, Coach, what's up? How's the baseball team doing? They had already started their season, and I think they were 5-1. He says, Ronnie, we need you to come out and pitch. We want you to get you ready. And I said, I'm a little behind. I said, he says, well, we'll help you get the work done for your schoolwork, but we definitely need another pitcher. Dick Bogdan, who was the captain of the team elect, and also the ace pitcher from the year before, came down with cancer. It was a sad occurrence at the school, and just a footnote to that, 2 years later, he passed away. So they needed another pitcher. He says, Ronnie, we got you penciled in for a week from Friday. This was a Wednesday. So I had 10 days to get ready to pitch against Brown University, always a strong Ivy League school in baseball. So he sent a catcher up to the field house, and for the next week, I threw batting practice, got my arm loosened up. I hadn't pitched for a year, and I figured I'd go about 3 or 4 innings if I could do that. Well, it ended up that I pitched all 9 innings, pitched a shutout, so I was in the routine. I was in the regular routine of Jim O'Neill, who was a scholarship basketball player, 6'5", 200 plus, a great pitcher. Jackie Londrigan from Webster, and myself were the top 3 starting pitchers, and he had a couple of relief pitchers to go along with that. And the schedule back then, it's not like today where they play 40 or 50 games. I see Connecticut play close to 50 games in the qualifying rounds for the NCAA. I think our total record was, before we went out to Omaha, was something like 18-2. So in any event, I started the game against Brown and went into the regular rotation and won 5 games before we went out to Omaha. But basically, that was the setup. Freshmen were ineligible. That was an NCAA rule that was later turned away. Tommy Heinsohn, I think, after his sophomore year, he also couldn't play as a freshman. and then that rule is no longer in effect. Holy Cross back then, it was an independent, it didn't belong to a league. We played all the better teams in New England, and they always saved their best pitcher for Holy Cross. That was their big game. The Ivy League was the only league in New England at that particular time. They had, and the Ivy League had good baseball. So it was a situation where we played the best, and surprisingly, we didn't know anything about the NCAA tournament. At the end of the season, a committee in New England made up of all the baseball coaches and some athletic directors, they got together and they chose Holy Cross as their representative for the NCAA. Coach Barry, who was a man of very few words, at one of our late practices says, "Oh yeah, team, we're going out to Omaha to compete in the national NCAA tournament." And we really didn't know much about it, other than it was in Omaha, Nebraska. We didn't know where Omaha, Nebraska was. But in any event, we were happy. You know, we thought we had a good team. We played, like I say, the better teams in New England, plus we played BC 3 times. And we used to open up our season with a practice game with either the Boston Red Sox, when they broke spring training, or the Boston Braves. So you know, we really had a lot of esteem, a lot of it because of Coach Barry and his affiliation with the major leagues as both a player and a coach. So we got ready to go out to Omaha, and a sidelight to that, the team was going to fly out there, and our Coach Barry didn't want to fly, so he was going to go out in a train. They went out and trained. Hop Riopelle and Jack Barry went out that way. And it was the beginning of a week of 90-plus weather in Omaha, Nebraska. And in addition to the heat, hotels were not equipped with air conditioning like they are today. And I think maybe our hotel had about 4 or 5 rooms that had the air conditioning. The coaches, of course, and a faculty moderator and things like that. A couple of players had it. But for the most part, the team used to cool off across the street in a nice park until late at night. The tournament was held in Rosenblatt Stadium, a stadium of about 14,000. And today, that stadium is between 35 and 40,000. The dimensions of the park were about 330 to the left and right, and center field about 400 feet. It was a beautiful park, and the attendance was terrific. They had people coming in all the time. When we got a practice in, we would practice at Creighton University, a Jesuit college not too far from Omaha, and we would go over there and then come back. But for the most part, the stadium was wonderful, and the games were well attended. And the teams were exceptionally talented. I mean, they came from all the sections of the country. Texas, Michigan State, Penn State. These state schools had between 20 and 40,000 students. Holy Cross back then in 1952 had a male enrollment of 1,800. A male enrollment of 1,800. So, needless to say, and out of the 1,800, the freshmen were ineligible. So we went out there. Let's say, you know, we went down as a dark horse. They seeded the favorite they thought that year was going to be Duke. Duke was favorite. And Texas had won the NCAA in 1949 and 1950. And the NCAA just began in like 1945. So it was a relatively new national championship. Today, the traveling squad for the NCAA is in approximately between 21 and 25. Back then, we only traveled out to Omaha with 15 players. And that was the three starters with Jim O'Neill, Jackie Londrigan, and myself. And we had a relief pitcher named Don Slattery, and he got one of the reunions, floored everyone in attendance. He said, to this day, I don't know why Coach Barry took me out to Omaha. He said, I had only pitched to one batter all year. we couldn't stop laughing. You see, he was his third base coach. So he took him out, and he had a couple of other pitches that's people that had thrown, but for the most part, see, we didn't play a big league regular schedule. We played, 22, 23 games regular season, and so played every third or fourth day out there. It's a double elimination tournament. As soon as you lose 2 games, you're gone. And so they call that, once you go into the loser's bracket or the elimination round, then if you lose that second, to win early. If you win early, you get into the winner's bracket, and there aren't as many winning teams as there are losers, so the losers play against each other to get into the winner's bracket. I was the third pitcher in the team. The first game, Jim O'Neill pitched, and that was on a Thursday, and he pitched a real good game, a low-scoring game, and then complete game. He pitched a complete game. In fact, I'll just preface that by saying every pitcher that pitched out there pitched a complete game. No relief pitching, no pinch hitters, no pinch runners. 11 players played every 7 games in 6 days, and that's unheard of. Unheard of. All you do is just watch any baseball game and you'll see. But in any event, Jim O'Neill started it off, and I think he's Western Michigan, was it? And then Jackie Londrigan. Jackie Londrigan pitched the second game, and it was on a Friday, and it was the best pitch game of the whole series. He lost a 1-0 game to Missouri. A 1-0 game to Missouri. Now we were in the loser's bracket. In order for us to win this College World Series, we've got to win the next 5 games in the next 4 days. The next 5 games in the next 4 days. So it's my turn to pitch against Texas. Texas had won the tournament in 49-50. And I was not a hard thrower, but I could strike batters out because I had a sidearm curveball that has the effect of a slider today, or a 12-6 curveball against left-handed batters that would usually result in a ground ball. And I had good control. So it was a hot day. It was 95 degrees out there, and it's a Saturday afternoon. I can remember it distinctly to this day. And the long and short of that was we ended up winning 2-1. So the 3 pitchers that pitched Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Now we have Sunday, we have a doubleheader. That is, if we win the first game, we've got a game at night, afternoon and night. Jim O'Neill's scheduled to pitch again. And again, he pitches another great game, complete game. And now we're getting ready for Jackie Londrigan to come back after pitching. He had 2 days rest from my game and Jim O'Neill's game. And he ends up having another good game, and we win 7-3 or something like that. And now we win a doubleheader, and we're back again on a Monday night, and it's my turn to pitch again. Now, I've only had 1 day's rest, so I don't know what, I'm looking down myself. I don't know if I'm going to pitch 9 innings or what's going to happen here. But in any event, I have another good game, a complete game. No pitcher, every pitcher that pitched for Holy Cross pitched complete games. And we won 7-3 over Missouri, the team that had beaten us earlier 1-0. Now we just have 1 game left, final game of the College World Series against Missouri. This is the 3rd time that we've played Missouri. So Jim O'Neill is going to pitch again. He's scheduled to start. And There's a full house, there's the capacity crowd, and the game is close for the first 4 or 5 innings, and then we have a couple of good innings, and we have some breathing room. And Coach Barry calls me and he says, Ronnie, he says, you and Jack go out and loosen up. Now, meanwhile, we had both. I don't have to review. We've just pitched, almost hourly, and so I go out and I said to Jack, I says, Jack, I said, he's not going to take Jim O'Neill out of the game. I said, I don't blame him. I said, but he's not going to substitute for him. I said, you and I can just loosen up, but I said, we're not going to be pitching. And sure enough, he completed the game, and Jim O'Neill finished the ball game, won his third game, was voted the most valuable player, rightfully so. And the sad part of Jim O'Neill's story is the reunions that we had in later years. He was hard to contact. We missed him. He moved a couple of times and finally contacted his daughters. And they said to us that their father talked more about the NCAA baseball tournament than anything they've ever seen. It was the best event of his life, he says. We even thought he was happier about that tournament than he was about having his children. But the long and short of it was that Jim O'Neill ended up living somewhere in the West Coast and was unable to make the reunions, but expressed his absolute delight when he talked about it, when he thought about it, and what it meant to him in his life. And that basically became the theme that I found is when I had as athletic director, when I started it, probably after the first 20 years, in the last, not 20 years, in the first 8 or 10 years, when I started having these reunions, that the players that came back were so taken up with the memories that they had from the trip to Omaha. When we get back after the tournament was over, the players that were, school was out, so the players that were in the Worcester area came back and they had a nice ceremony for us at City Hall. And then we went our way, and then later we're feted at the first football game the following season when we played Syracuse. 25,000 people at the football game, and our players were all put in a convertible. And we sat in a convertible, and they drove us around the baseball field and gave us a fine tribute and presented each player with a ring that I still have today, 70 years later, and it's my favorite ring. In any event, it's hard for me to. My children have always been amazed, saying, "Dad, you really remember an awful lot about it." I said it was so emotional. I said, God has been very good to me. I've been in on a lot of championship games, a lot of championship teams, in high school, state championships, New England championships. An NIC championship in basketball, and others as a coach. And yet, the one championship that my mind is so vivid about is the College World Series in 1952, which was 70 years ago. So it's a special time. I watched all the games last week on television. No other New England team has ever even come close. And I saw the Yukon team last week, and I watched their games. They had played, I think, they had won in the 40. They had played an awful lot of games pre-season, and I was surprised that they played that many games. But it's much more difficult today because they're doing the baseball College World Series similar to the basketball, and inviting 64 teams. So they have all these preliminary regionals that they play before they go out to Omaha. My son, when he was a young kid, I used to, like when he was 8 years old, he was the national champion of pass, punt, and kick. And that was only because he always wanted to say, Dad, I want to play catch, want to play catch, want to play catch. And I think the one thing I was able to do for Ronnie was, be it a basketball or be it a baseball, teach him the right way to do things. In other words, if you're going to practice this game, practice the right way. And talk about, you know, if you're going to play, you know, you're thinking about doing the right thing all the time and working at it. And I think that helped him a great deal. And so when he started playing baseball, he did things, he liked it, that's more importantly. And then when he went to Holy Cross, it just became second nature to him. And he started for 4 years and is in the Hall of Fame for both basketball and baseball. And he did the same thing with his son, Matt. And it was something that was not forced on them. They wanted it. And they played the Little League right up from Little League. And I never played Little League. They didn't have Little League when I was growing up. So they played Little League, Legion Ball, and they were up the ladder, and then it just was a natural transition, and it paid off. They have so many great memories themselves now, and I think that's what sports are. Sports to me have always been something that I've really enjoyed, and my mother and father, I look back on them. They came over from Portugal as young adults, got married here in the States, no education, and I have a picture that I brought today that when I came back after the College World Series, they called me up and said that they would like to do the mayor of the city of Somerville, where I grew up, said, Ronnie, we want to see you up here at City Hall tomorrow if you could. We want to do something for you, which was very nice. And so I says, okay. And he says, if you want, you can bring your mother with you. I said, okay. So I go up to City Hall the next day, and City Hall is adjacent to the high school. And they have, in Somerville High School back then, it's grades 10, 11, and 12, 2,400 students. It's a big high school. And so what they do is they have a parade for me. And they're having a parade, and my mother is with me, and there's a big crowd of people, and they put a picture in the Record American the next day. It took the whole back page. And my mother looks at me and she says, Ronnie, she says, what are we here for? And it was her innocence. She had no idea. She had no idea why. She had never seen me play a baseball game. She had no idea why all these people came in the high school and the college and the mayor of the city. And I said, we just won a national championship. And she said, oh. She didn't say, what's that? That was what I was expecting. But in any event, it was times like that I said, it's all worth it. And so what I always tried to do was, because my mother and father had enough to do with just make a living, that, no problems. To me, discipline was most important, that, you do the right thing and you don't cause any problems. And my brothers were the same way, only they never played baseball. They just played the basketball. But coming back, and then the next year, the big celebration they had for the team at the football game, at the Syracuse football game. And the memories people have of the events that took place out in Omaha have made it just a memory that I'll always have.